Hi, I'm Mira. Once again, I wasn't invited to my own family's reunion. It's been a decade, 10 years of being left out, airbrushed from photos, and an empty chair where my name used to belong. They've always labeled me as overly sensitive, aloof, and dramatic. But this time, I didn't beg for space at their table. I bought the entire beach house. So when they arrived with their luggage and forced smiles, and the receptionist asked, "Are you on Ms. Rennick's guest list?" they were finally forced to say my name, or leave. But before we go deeper, I would love to hear where you are watching from and what time is it there. Drop it in the comments. I actually read them all. Now back to the story. Monday mornings aren't supposed to feel like this. Normally, mine start with lukewarm coffee, a protein bar I forget to finish, and a pile of unread work emails I ignore until round 2 of caffeine kicks in. But not today. Today started with a different kind of jolt. I was midway through organizing the logistics for an upcoming healthcare summit when a new subject line appeared in bold. Davenport Family Beach Week 2025 RSVP now. I froze. Then I clicked, before I could talk myself out of it. Everyone was CC'd, Tessa, Blake, Aunt Roz, even Cousin Henry, who's practically a ghost since the Bush era. But my name? Nowhere. Not even a misspelling. I hadn't been forgotten. I'd been deliberately excluded. I just sat there, stunned. Watching the email chain fill with memories, jokes, and a photo of the fire pit at sunset. The same one where I made s'mores at age 8 before I realized that love in this family came with strings and expiration dates. I kept scrolling, hoping for some sort of correction. A follow-up, but I knew better. This wasn't the first time. Last year, when I called crying, Tessa claimed the invite must have gone to spam. Tech stuff, you know, she said with a laugh, like getting erased from the family calendar was a harmless glitch. I closed the thread and just sat there. My office suddenly felt too sterile, too large. The framed degree on my wall looked like it belonged to someone else. Sunlight poured in through the windows over the San Diego skyline. Warm and golden, but all I felt was hollow. California sun. Empty chest. I turned toward my bookshelf without thinking. And there it was, the teal glass seashell. It sat quietly behind old industry binders and a dried-out succulent. A birthday gift from when I was 10. My mom had picked it up at some roadside antique shop and said it looked like something unique for her unique girl. That was before she started calling Tessa her greatest joy. Before she began introducing me as the one who works too much. Before I learned that being the youngest didn't mean being cherished, it meant being available longer. "You good?" I flinched. Ben, my coworker, was standing by my desk with his usual mug of lukewarm green tea. I forced a swallow. "Yeah, spam email." He gave me a knowing look. "From them again?" I didn't answer, just forced a small smile and turned back to my laptop, but I didn't reopen the conference document. I hovered. Then I shut it altogether. My promotion file still sat in front of me. I was on the cusp of becoming senior VP at 38, the youngest ever at the firm. I'd survived backroom politics, 12-hour days, and being passed over in favor of men with golf memberships and mediocre ideas. But none of that mattered to them. To them, I was the one who left, who forgot where she came from. My phone buzzed. A text from Lena, my one real ally in the family. Saw the invite. Want to crash it for laughs? My fingers paused over the keys. Then I typed. Or maybe it's time I do something smarter. I opened a browser tab I'd been quietly saving for weeks. Real estate listings. More specifically, that beach house. The same place where Tessa posed for her maternity shoot. The same place where my parents celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary, without even telling me. The house was listed. Quietly. No family announcement, no casual group chat. The market had softened, and they were clearly trying to unload it before prices dropped more. I stared at the photos, wraparound porch. Ocean view, the same wicker chairs where my dad used to read Steinbeck aloud, before he stopped answering my calls. So this is what it had come to. I moved the mouse to the contact agent button. Paused. Then clicked. Not long after, my phone rang. I didn't need to check. I already knew. Same ringtone I'd given her years ago. Same ache in my chest. I let it ring twice before picking up. "Hi, Mom," I said, flatly. "Mira, sweetie," she sang, in that overly sweet voice she always used right before doing something hurtful in the most polite way possible. I didn't wait. Let me guess, Tessa's kids need the bunk beds again? Or maybe Blake's new girlfriend has a phobia of hotel linens? There was silence on her end, long enough for me to imagine her blinking down at her perfectly done nails, scrambling for the next line in her script. Finally, she replied, "You know how tricky it gets with the little ones. We're just limited on space this year." I wanted to laugh. Not because it was funny, but because I could have written her dialogue myself. "You understand, right, Mira?" she added, soft as a sigh. "It's just logistics." Same phrase she used 2 years ago when she called to tell me, last minute, that there was no room for me. The little ones need the bunk room. And I did understand. I understood that my presence was always optional. The only time I mattered was when someone needed money. "I understand perfectly," I said. "Thanks for the warning." Then I hung up. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, calm as someone who saw this coming a long time ago. Back at my desk, I opened a spreadsheet, my personal financial records. The numbers stared back at me like loyal soldiers. Solid, organized, unflinching. I checked my liquid assets. Reviewed vesting dates for my stock. Scrolled to my discretionary funds. Then I whispered, "Game on." 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Lena. Screenshot incoming. She always warned me before sending receipts. The image opened, a chat thread I wasn't in, of course not. "Tessa, don't worry, Myra's not coming, again. She wants it to be all about her, as usual." Then came the emojis, the laughter, and naturally, they assumed the house was still theirs to decorate. That afternoon, I sat by my apartment window, her old journal in my lap. I didn't write in it. I just traced the broken seashells glued to the cover, remembering how they used to feel when I was a kid. Then I reached across the desk and grabbed the teal glass seashell, the one tucked behind receipts and barely used notebooks. I set it next to the journal. Same shimmer, same tone, same quiet strength. Funny how they forgot these pieces. But I didn't. They had. I looked over the trust paperwork again, one last time, before I signed it. I didn't feel victorious. Not yet. Just ready. The attorney handed me a copy. "It's official. Transfer's underway." "They have no idea, do they?" I asked. He shook his head. "Not yet. But they will." Back home, I refreshed the real estate listing for the beach house. They'd added a new photo, twinkle lights on the porch. Set up for summer guests. Let them prep. Let them show up with coolers and passive-aggressive smiles. Let them toast to family on property they thought they still owned. They forgot to read the document that mattered most. I wasn't stealing anything. I was activating what was already mine. The silence that followed was almost tranquil, but underneath it? Leverage. The next morning, I brewed a heavy cup of black coffee and refreshed my inbox. And there it was. Davenport Family Reunion. Final RSVP reminder. This time, it came from Tessa's personal Gmail. Same false warmth in the subject line. But the contents? Room assignments. Beach games. A family versus family tournament. A Spotify playlist. My name? Not mentioned. Again. No hope to see you. Not even a typo. But everyone else was CC'd. Then, another ping. Lena, you need to see this. Attached, screenshots. A new chat group titled, Core Davenports Only. Tessa had written, Myra's not coming. Let's move on without her drama. Blake had replied with a laughing emoji and a gif of a peace sign. But the worst part? Lena added a message. Your mom asked me if I'd mind staying in your old room. Said it's just sitting there. My old room. The one with my grandma's quilt. The one with the bookshelf I built. The mural I painted at 12. The desk where I wrote my first college essay. They weren't just excluding me. They were offering up what was mine, like I never mattered at all. I didn't cry. I just leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the weight of it settle. Then I opened the real estate portal. I now had full back-end access, owner permissions, short-term bookings, guest management. I scrolled the calendar. Only one room was left unbooked. The master suite. King bed. Ocean view. Private deck. I smirked faintly and began typing. Guest, Ms. M. Rennick. Check-in, Friday. Stay, 3 nights. Notes. Please chill a bottle of Perrier Jouet. Guest prefers firm pillows, cotton sheets, and full privacy. Click. Confirmation popped up instantly. A ping landed in my inbox. Their reunion? Now booked under my name. I took a deep breath. My shoulders dropped. Let's see how they spin that. That night, I paced the living room with a glass of wine. The fire flickered behind me while I swiped through photo archives. Photos from reunions I took, but was never in. Graduations I missed because of work. Birthdays where my gifts went unopened. One photo stood out, Tessa blowing out candles. I stood behind her in the original. But in the version they posted? I'd been cropped out. That was me to them. A background figure. A utility. Until I stopped being useful. I remembered what Dad said the last time I stood up for myself. You're just too sensitive, Mira. Not everything revolves around you. But this moment? It did. Not because I wanted attention. But because I finally had the pen. And I was writing myself back into the narrative. Before bed, I texted Lena. Thanks for the warning. Don't cancel your plans. Just be ready for some awkward silences. She replied with a laughing emoji and 3 words. I live for this. The beach house might have been theirs to rent in the past, but now? The key was in my hand. There was just one room left to reserve, the one with the best view. The one tied to the deed. After confirming the booking, I didn't stare at the screen. I just closed the tab, shut my laptop, and stepped away from it all, mentally and physically. The next morning, I drove inland, away from the coastline, away from the emails. Into the hills past the citrus groves where my grandmother was buried. No flowers, no notes. Just me, and a single scoop of lavender honey ice cream from the old parlor she used to adore, melting slightly in a cone, balanced in my hand like an offering. It was our tradition, quiet, almost invisible to others. But meaningful. The wind stirred dry grass across the rows of stone. I found her marker nestled between 2 rose bushes she never liked. Too flashy, she once said. Give me time or mint. Something that lasts. I smiled, lowered myself onto the sun-warmed grass, and sat beside her. Hey, Grandma, I whispered. They're doing it again. You'd roll your eyes into another dimension. I let the breeze carry my silence for a moment. Then, I set the cone gently down near her nameplate. You told me once, don't raise your voice, raise your worth. I did. I really did. I didn't cry. I didn't grin. I just sat in that stillness, the kind she'd mastered, that said I see you without ever saying it aloud. That kind of stillness doesn't come from peace. It comes from clarity. From knowing who you are, even when everyone else twists your reflection. Eventually, I stood, dusted off my jeans, and returned to the car. My phone buzzed just as I was about to start the engine. A message in the family thread lit up my screen. I called dibs on the master suite. Feels good to be back. Let the reunion begin. Of course. Blake. Claiming things that were never his. Acting like he'd earned something. Like he built the house himself instead of coasting through life while I picked up the bills he defaulted on. The replies came quickly. Classic Blake. Better grab it before the kids destroy it. I just sat there, phone against the steering wheel, reading every line. Not one person questioned who made the reservation. No one thought to ask who owned the house. Maybe they didn't want to know. Maybe they liked me invisible. But not this time. I opened the thread and typed. That room is already reserved. Under my name. Then hit send. Silence followed. A deep, digital stillness. No emojis. No gifs. No casual banter. And then, just as expected, came a private message. Tessa, what are you trying to do? I stared at her words. Let them sit there. Then, slowly, I typed. I'm not trying anything. I warned you. You just never listened. I watched the little, seen indicator pop up. Then I muted the thread. Blocked the chat. Logged out. Not out of anger. Out of certainty. Because when you finally stop needing permission to exist, you begin to walk like you own the ground beneath you. And in this case, I literally did. The drive back was quiet. The highway mostly empty. Somewhere between the hills and coast, I glanced at myself in the rearview mirror. Still stern, but softer. Like something in me had uncoiled. Not vengeance. Not quite. Just conviction. That evening, I opened a blank document and began drafting a short note to the property manager to confirm my reservation. There was no agenda, no spectacle. I was simply honoring the truth. The truth they had refused to acknowledge for years. And now, that truth had a title deed. A legal clause. And my name, in ink. They had deleted my name from invitations for over a decade. But this time, they'd have no choice but to say it, at check-in. As the sun slipped beneath the ocean's edge, I parked just far enough from the beach house to stay unnoticed. I'd timed it on purpose. By now, the house would already be humming with their laughter and clinking glasses. I watched from a distance as the cars rolled in. Tessa's white SUV. Blake's obnoxiously large truck. My mother's aging sedan, still flaunting that tired proud grandma bumper sticker. They didn't see me. They never really had. At 6:45 p.m., I saw them carrying bags inside, chatting like they owned the world. I gave them a few minutes, just enough time to settle into what they thought was still theirs. Then I shifted into drive. I pulled into the driveway and stepped out, walking toward the reception desk. Inside, Tessa was already arguing with the clerk. Arms flailing in that familiar theatrical way. Blake leaned on the marble counter like he owned it, while my mother stood stiff behind them, lips pursed, part judgment, part denial. My heels tapped steadily against the tile floor as I approached, just in time to hear the receptionist say calmly. So, you're not on Ms. Rennick's guest list? Tessa's face twisted. Excuse me? I don't care what your system says. This is our family's house. We've been coming here for over 20 years. The receptionist looked at me. She blinked once, twice, and then gave the smallest smile. Ms. Rennick, welcome. I was just explaining. I heard, I said, stepping next to Tessa but not looking at her. No need to escalate. Let me clarify. Blake straightened up, his cocky posture faltering. What is this? Some joke, Mira? You think this is funny? No, I said simply. I think it's overdue. I handed my ID to the receptionist. The deed was finalized 3 weeks ago. The house belongs to me now. Silence fell. Not the awkward kind. The kind that breaks glass under your feet. My mother's hands clenched her purse tighter. You bought it? She asked, voice cracking with disbelief. Yes, Mom. It's legal. Clean. Final. You would have known if you read the trust Grandma left me. Tessa's complexion turned the same blotchy red I remembered from every time she didn't get her way. Why would you do this? She demanded. You knew we were planning the reunion. This house was supposed to be ours, our family's safe place. I finally turned to face her. And I was supposed to be your sister. Your daughter. But you left me off every invite, every thread, every photo. So I made my own way in. The clerk looked nervously between us. Blake scoffed, his laugh hollow, nervous. You really think you can just kick us out? You think you've won? No, Blake, I haven't won. I've reclaimed something. There's a difference. Then, turning to the desk clerk, I said clearly, please kindly help escort anyone not listed under my guest registry. Be courteous. They're still family. The clerk nodded, hesitated only briefly, then picked up the phone and began calling security. Standard protocol, nothing urgent. We'll contest this, Tessa muttered behind me. You'll be hearing from our lawyer. I didn't even look back. You might want to review the clause about back taxes and maintenance defaults before you do. You'd be surprised how much was already in motion before you sent out your guest list. My mom stepped forward then, voice low. Do you really hate us that much? I paused, turned slightly, let the silence stretch. Then, calmly, I don't hate you. I just stopped hoping you'd be different. And with that, I walked toward the elevator, leaving their stunned silence behind me, like wind across broken sand. As the doors slid closed, my breathing slowed, not because I felt relief, but because I was ready. Because what came next wouldn't be silence. It would be war. Later that evening, I had just poured myself a cup of tea when a knock came, not at the door, but on the wide glass window overlooking the beach. Not the polite knock of a neighbor. This one came with high beams and media urgency. Through the curtain, I spotted a man with a microphone and a cameraman behind him. News van parked in front. The moment I opened the door, the reporter lunged into his question. Ms. Rennick, can you confirm whether you manipulated your elderly father into transferring the property? Sources say he may not have been mentally sound. The red light on the camera blinked. Steady and sharp. I said nothing, just closed the door. By the time I reached the living room, my phone had erupted with texts. Former classmates, distant relatives, old coworkers. Is it true? Then came the email. Temporary injunction notice. Occupancy of 127 Seabreeze Lane must cease immediately pending court review. Violations may lead to penalties. And the cherry on top? A forwarded screenshot from Lena. Tessa's newest social media post. A woman who betrays her own family was never raised with love. I pray for her soul. Underneath, heart emojis. Sad faces. People praying for a family they didn't know. People who didn't even know my name until 24 hours ago. I stared at my phone, notifications lighting up like wildfire, the headlines forming without my voice. I should have seen this coming. But no one's ever truly ready to be painted as a villain, especially not by the people who once kissed your bruises and tied your hair with gentle hands. I didn't cry, not at first. I just sat there, in the silence of the master bedroom, staring across the room at an old photo I hadn't packed away yet. Me, 7 years old, wrapped around my dad's leg, both of us mid-laugh, the image blurred from motion. A time before things changed, before quiet replaced kindness. Was I still that girl? Would he even recognize me now? The tears came, but not from sadness. They came from grief. A kind of grief that had aged, hardened, worn thin. I don't remember how long I sat there. Maybe an hour, maybe 3. Outside, the ocean kept its rhythm, loud and indifferent. Eventually, I wandered to the built-in shelves by the stairs, trailing my fingers along the dusty wood until something stopped me. Hidden behind old paperbacks, I found a tiny seashell, pale ivory. Faint blue streak, weather-worn. The one Dad helped me find the summer before Tessa went off to college. You deserve everything good this world can offer, he told me that day, pressing it into my palm like a treasure. I closed my fingers around it now and whispered, you said that once. But that man? He didn't exist anymore. Not in the court filings that bore his name. Not in the media circus lit up by my signature on a property deed. That version of him had been erased. So had I. They had twisted me into a caricature so completely, I had almost forgotten who I really was. Until Lena sent a message. They wanted war. Let's start with truth. And then came the screenshots. Dozens. Group chats. Private emails. Snide notes passed between Tessa and my mother. Tessa calling me emotionally unstable. My mom writing, "She's too wrapped up in herself to care about us. Don't feel bad leaving her out, she's used to it." I didn't gasp. I didn't shout. But something moved inside me, like breath finding a way through ribs that had long forgotten how to expand. So this was the truth. They hadn't just excluded me. They'd been working for years to erase me behind closed doors. I looked down at the seashell again. This wasn't the moment I broke. This was the moment I began writing the rest. I opened my laptop, created a blank document, and titled it with the day's date. Then I started typing the truth. A version recorded in digital ink, in a language they'd never learn, because the silence they forced me into had taught me something they never mastered. How to outlast them. Because I had patience. I had proof. And now? I had purpose. I wasn't cornered anymore. I had been before. But this time, I brought matches. Blank, underscore, blank. The morning of the hearing, the sky was dull, muted gray, not bright, not stormy. Like the whole world was holding its breath. I walked into the courthouse alone. No legal entourage, no flashy suit. Just me, in a navy blue dress my grandma once called steel-willed. A folder pressed tight to my chest. Everything I needed was in that folder. Everything they hoped would stay buried. Inside, the courtroom had that frigid, sterile tension I remembered from the last time, when we divided Grandma's estate with fake smiles and sharpened knives. My mom sat stiff in the third row. Tessa was 2 seats ahead, clad in all white, trying to appear untouchable, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. Blake was nowhere to be seen. Probably sending cease and desist threats from somewhere safer. The clerk called it Rennick versus Davenport, a petition to block the property transfer based on claims of manipulation and elder abuse. The judge glanced over his glasses toward their side. Counsel? Tessa's lawyer stood, young, overconfident, too slick for something this personal. Your Honor, he began. The petitioner contends that Ms. Mira Rennick coerced her father during a period of declining mental clarity, leading to an unauthorized transfer of deed rights to the property in question. He let the word coerced hang in the air. I didn't flinch, didn't glance at anyone. The judge turned to me. Ms. Rennick? I stood calmly and opened the top flap of my folder. With the court's permission, I said, I'd like to present video and audio evidence of consent and family dynamics relevant to this case. The judge gave a nod. Proceed. The courtroom dimmed slightly as the bailiff queued up the footage. The screen came alive with sunlight and soft chatter. A video taken 2 years ago, on the porch of the beach house. My father sat beside me, sipping coffee, his voice unmistakably lucid. I want Mira to have this place. She's the only one who came back after the accident. She's the only one who ever asked how I was, not what I could give. The camera briefly panned toward me. I wasn't crying in the clip, but I was close. Are you sure? I asked. I'm sure, he replied. Then, softer. They always made her feel like a guest. She's not a guest. She's the legacy. A rustle of discomfort moved through the courtroom. Even my mother shifted in her seat. But I wasn't finished. Next, we played the audio clip, clipped and labeled by Lena, timestamped just 6 months ago. Tessa's voice, cutting through a speakerphone. Let her rot in her little condo. She was never part of this family. Not really. If she wanted in, she should have been easier to control. The judge raised a brow and turned his gaze directly to her. She tried to sit straighter in her high-priced suit but seemed to shrink inside it instead. After a long pause, the judge spoke. This court finds no basis for the petition. The video shows mental clarity and intent. The audio reveals clear, purposeful exclusion. Ms. Rennick acted legally, and with integrity. He paused again, this time with a sharper tone. This courtroom does not exist to resolve generational grudges, nor to uphold cruelty passed off as tradition. Then came the final blow. Case dismissed. Tessa froze. Her mouth opened, then closed. My mom didn't move, just sat there, pale, blinking straight ahead. I gathered my folder and walked out, without ever looking back. Outside, the media was already waiting, buzzed like hornets. Ms. Rennick, any comment? I turned to them only once. Sometimes the only way to break a cycle, I said, is to walk away holding your truth. Cameras flashed. But I didn't stop. I walked past the marble steps, through the parking lot, and toward my car. There was no applause, no cinematic music playing behind me. Just my footsteps, and the ocean breeze finally smelling like home. At the edge of the lot, I paused. Closed my eyes, not listening for anyone else's voice. Just my own breath. They had their version of the story. I had the truth. And that day, truth didn't yell. It won. The wind picked up along the dunes as I drove back. That's when I realized. The beach house was never the prize. I was. When I pulled into the gravel drive, the air felt different. Saltier. Softer. The kind of breeze that doesn't just touch you. It reminds you to breathe. I stepped out of the car and stood for a moment, letting the weight of everything fall off me, grain by grain. The house stood there, golden in the light. Quiet. I had driven by it for years, always looking away. Now, the keys in my hand didn't feel like a trophy. They felt like something ancient. Something I had to become strong enough to hold again. Inside, it looked like someone had left in a rush. A half-full water glass on the counter. Towels folded by the stairs. Photos on the hallway wall. Tessa's kids. Summer barbecues. Family moments I was never asked to be in. I hovered over one frame with my hand. But I didn't take it down. I walked past slowly. My steps echoed off the wood floors, like the house was holding its breath. Upstairs, the master bedroom glowed in the afternoon sun. Bed still made, air still familiar. My name was on the deed. But their fingerprints lingered. In the curtains. In the shampoo bottles. Even in the playlist still saved on the speaker. I left them untouched. In the room that used to be Grandma's, I finally opened a drawer I'd avoided. There it was. The seashell wind chime we made when I was 8. Tangled, dusty, cracked in a few places. One of the painted letters, my letter, had faded completely. I didn't try to fix it right away. I sat with it, turned each shell in my hand, remembering her voice, her laugh. I could hear her say it again. Not everything broken needs to be replaced, Mira. Some things just need a steadier hand. I brought it downstairs and placed it on the kitchen table. Piece by piece, I started entangling it. No glue, no shortcuts, just quiet and patience. Outside, the waves broke against the shore. A soft rhythm, the only approval I ever needed. It didn't need to be perfect. It just needed to ring again. That afternoon, Lena arrived, bottle of wine in one hand, a bag of groceries in the other. You didn't think I'd let you move in without at least some Pinot and paper towels, right? She joked. We cleaned in companionable silence. Two sisters, not by behavior, but by blood, who had watched the same messy saga play out from different corners. We scrubbed down the same counter where Tessa used to reign with her overpriced cheese boards and underhanded comments. We folded throw blankets that Mom once reserved only for proper guests. And somewhere in that absurdity, I laughed. Later, we settled on the porch with wine in hand. The sky had gone rose gold, the kind of sunset you can only catch near the sea. Lena turned to me and said softly, "You didn't just win, Mira. You broke the pattern. You let go." I didn't reply right away. I was watching pelicans skim the water, wings wide and still, completely unbothered. About an hour later, there was a knock at the gate. My spine tensed, old habit. But it wasn't Tessa or Mom. It was Mrs. Ellison, from 2 houses down, holding a tin of lemon bars wrapped in a dish towel. "I just wanted to say welcome home," she said warmly. "Your dad used to talk about you, you know. More than the others." I blinked. "He did?" She nodded. Of course. Said you were the one who asked about the tide charts when you were 6. Told me, that girl thinks in tides. I always remembered that. I stood there, the lemon bars in my hands suddenly heavier than they looked. I thanked her and watched her walk back down the stone path. After she left, I hung the seashell wind chime outside the porch. It swayed gently, catching the breeze, like it remembered what it was made for. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was bracing for something. I wasn't holding my breath anymore. Maybe they'll never say sorry. Maybe there won't be a holiday meal where someone admits, "You were right," but that's no longer mine to chase. I stopped waiting for them to fix it, or name it, or explain it. I built a life that didn't require their permission. What I reclaimed was more than a house. I reclaimed my voice. And I reclaimed my silence. I didn't burn the bridge. I just stopped begging to be allowed across it. As the sky darkened, I moved through the house slowly, turning off lights one room at a time. When I reached the door, I paused. And this time, I closed it from the inside. What's something you've reclaimed, your space, your voice, your peace? Share your story in the comments. You never know who it might inspire. If this resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a chapter. And if you've ever felt left out, written off, or like you had to earn your seat in your own story, you're not alone, and you never needed their permission.